Most people don't realize this, but their greatest enemy isn't out there. It's in here, their own mind. Overthinking, overreacting, rushing to conclusions, trying to control what was never theirs to begin with. They think they're thinking, but really they're just running in circles, emotionally hijacked, wasting precious energy on things they cannot change. And it shows in their anxiety and their regrets, in how easily they get thrown off course. But the Stoics lived differently. They weren't superhuman. They just trained their minds like warriors. They knew that the man who masters his thoughts becomes untouchable. Calm in conflict, clear in chaos, focused when others crumble. In this video, I'll show you the 9 mental habits that will set you apart from 90% of people. Not by making you louder, but by making you wiser, more resilient, more dangerous in the quietest way possible. If you're tired of living at the mercy of your emotions and ready to take back control of your mind, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. What you're about to learn rewires everything.
Number 1.
Let go of what you can't control. This is the habit that quietly separates the wise from the anxious. Most people exhaust themselves trying to micromanage life, fixing people, forcing outcomes, fearing what hasn't even happened yet. They confuse control with responsibility and end up drowning in stress over things that were never theirs to hold. But the Stoics live by a different rule. Distinguish what is within your control and let the rest fall away. Epictetus made this the foundation of his philosophy. Some things are in our control and others not, he said. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of this principle. That's not just a comforting idea, it's a survival tool. Because when you try to control the uncontrollable, you invite disorder into your own mind. You become reactive, emotionally hijacked, and exhausted. But when you pull back, when you protect your energy like it's sacred, you start to see with clarity instead of disparity. Marcus Aurelius echoed this same truth. He wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And he lived it. He was emperor of the most powerful empire on earth, yet he never claimed to control it all. Plagues came, betrayals happened. His own family disappointed him, but he didn't fall apart because he never placed his peace in the external outcomes. He placed it in the space he governed best, his own mind. Even in moments of doubt and sadness. And this principle isn't just for philosophers or rulers. It holds true in the real world. Consider Viktor Frankl, who survived unthinkable suffering in Nazi concentration camps. Though not a Stoic, he echoed their core lesson when he said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude." When the world stripped him of everything, he held on to the one thing that gave him strength, his ability to respond with intention, not despair. And that act of, but don't be misled, letting go is not weakness. It is not apathy. It's discipline. It's knowing moment by moment what is yours to carry and what isn't. Every morning you'll be tempted to pick up what doesn't belong to you. Other people's emotions, the fear of tomorrow, the judgment of strangers. But in that moment, you have a choice. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, release it. Let it fall gently but firmly, and return to the stillness of your center where real strength is cultivated. Ironically, the less you try to control the world, the more influence you begin to have, not over others, but over yourself. You become calm when others panic, grounded when others cling, steady in a world that spins. And that stillness, that's not passive. That's power. The kind you don't need to prove because it speaks for itself. The kind that radiates from within, quiet, calm, and unshakable. The kind that doesn't need to shout because it's already heard.
Number 2.
Rehearse the worst-case scenario. Most people avoid thinking about what could go wrong. They label it negative thinking, as if imagining the worst somehow makes it happen. But the Stoics saw it differently. To them, rehearsing adversity wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. It was a mental strategy for fortifying the soul against surprise, panic, and emotional collapse. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, and they practiced it not to dwell in fear, but to rise above it. When you mentally rehearse what could go wrong, something unexpected happens. Fear loses its grip, because fear thrives on uncertainty. It magnifies the unknown and exaggerates consequences. But once you consciously imagine the loss, the betrayal, the failure, your mind stops spiraling. It starts planning, and planning turns fear into strength. Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." In other words, what you've already faced in the mind cannot unseat you. This practice is especially powerful in today's world, where so many live in quiet dread of what might happen. Will I lose this job? Will this person leave me? What if things fall apart? These questions whisper constantly, stealing peace by the hour. But the Stoic doesn't run from them. He meets them head on. He visualizes the worst not to invite it, but to be immune to it. And once that exercise is complete, he returns to the present moment, not panicked, but calm. Not afraid, but prepared. Consider the example of Tim Ferriss, entrepreneur and best-selling author, who credits Stoicism for transforming his thinking. He practices a modern version of premeditatio malorum called fear setting. Instead of visualizing success, he walks himself through failure, step by step. What's the worst that could happen? What would I do if it did? How could I recover, regroup, or even grow from it? Ferriss said this single practice saved him from making poor decisions driven by fear. Because when you take this habit isn't about becoming cynical. It's about becoming resilient. You're not bracing for disaster. You're removing its shock value. You're not choosing to suffer in advance. You're building a mind that can endure without breaking. And paradoxically, the more you stare fear in the face, the less intimidating it becomes. It turns from monster to possibility, from threat to preparation. Still, this tool must be handled with wisdom. The point isn't to live in catastrophe. It's to gain perspective. Ask yourself, if the worst happened, who would I become on the other side? Would I still be me? Would I still have my mind, my values, my will to rebuild? If the answer is yes, then the fear no longer holds power. It becomes just another condition you've already survived mentally. The Stoics didn't rehearse loss to become bitter. They did it to become better. They wanted in wash. And when practiced consistently, this habit builds something very few people have today: quiet confidence. Not bravado, not delusion, but inner steadiness. Because while others pray that nothing goes wrong, you're already prepared for when it does. That's not negativity. That's strength sharpened by foresight.
Number 3.
Pause between stimulus and response. It happens fast. Someone disrespects you. An email triggers you. A delay ruins your plan. And before you even realize it, you've reacted. Words fly out, tension builds, and later regret settles in. This is the trap of impulsive living, being run by every emotion, every event, every tiny disruption. But the Stoics taught that the space between what happens and how you respond is where your true power lives. And the wider you make that space, the stronger and wiser you become. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In that short sentence lies a lifelong practice. The world will always stimulate you. You'll be interrupted, challenged, offended. But reaction is not destiny. It's a decision, and decisions, when made with intention, reshape your entire life. The Stoics didn't suppress emotion, they studied it. They learned how to pause, observe, and choose their reaction rather than be controlled by it. This inner delay, this breath of clarity, is the mark of mental strength. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations reflected often on this. He reminded himself, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. That moment between the pain and the judgment is where the Stoic mind operates, with stillness, To bring this into the modern world, think of Ryan Holiday, best-selling author and contemporary Stoic. He once shared how, early in his career, a single rude email could ruin his day. He would react instantly, firing back defensively, only to regret it hours later. But over time, through deliberate reflection and journaling, he developed what he calls the ability to wait. Just 5 seconds, sometimes 10. That pause gave him space to choose, not just how to respond, but who he wanted to be in that response. Because here's the deeper truth. Every emotional reaction you don't control becomes a decision made for you. Someone else pushes a button and you dance. That's not power. That's programming. And if you keep living that way, your peace will always depend on how the world treats you. But when you can pause, even briefly, you reclaim the wheel. You re-enter the moment with clarity instead of chaos, choice instead of compulsion. Of course, this isn't easy. You'll be tempted to react, especially when your pride is wounded or your boundaries feel violated. But in that very instant, remind yourself, this feeling is real, but it doesn't have to rule me. Create space. Breathe, name the emotion. Question the story. Then respond like the person you're becoming, not the one your impulse is dragging you back into. Practicing this pause doesn't mean becoming cold or robotic. It means becoming deliberate. It means protecting your energy from being hijacked by every minor disruption. And in doing so, you begin to master your inner world. You become less reactive, more grounded, and far more respected. Not because you demand it, but because you embody it. Because in that space between stimulus and response is your last form of freedom. And that freedom is where strength is built, trust is earned, and character is forged.
Number 4.
Question everything, even yourself. One of the most overlooked Stoic habits isn't about reacting less. It's about thinking more clearly. At the root of most poor decisions is one thing: unchecked assumptions. We believe something because we heard it once. We act on a feeling without asking where it came from. We repeat the same story in our head, even if it's false. But the Stoics practiced a rare discipline, the discipline of inner inquiry. They didn't just question the world, they questioned their own thoughts. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This is why so many people stay stuck, not because they lack intelligence, but because they're too certain of their current beliefs. They cling to opinions like armor, not realizing that real wisdom begins the moment you doubt yourself. The Stoic doesn't assume clarity. He earns it through relentless reflection, daily journaling, and the courage to challenge his own mind. Marcus Aurelius did this constantly. His meditations weren't written for an audience. They were written as reminders to himself. In almost every entry, he questions his judgments. Am I being fair? Am I seeing this clearly? Am I reacting or responding? He didn't trust his first thought. He examined it. Because he knew, if your thinking is distorted, your life will be too. Now let's make this practical. Imagine you get ignored by someone you care about. Instantly, the story starts. They don't respect me. I'm being rejected. I must have done something wrong. But a Stoic would stop and ask, is that true? Or is that just my fear speaking? That simple act of questioning the thought before acting on it can change everything. You shift from reacting to understanding. And from understanding, you choose wisely. Consider the example of Naval Ravikant, entrepreneur and philosopher of our time. He often speaks about mental models, how most people walk around operating on outdated scripts. He says the most important skill for getting rich is becoming a clear thinker. I don't know, but this isn't just about money. It's about life. Clear thinking comes from clearing away illusion. And clearing illusion requires brutal honesty with yourself, especially when it's uncomfortable. But here's the challenge. Questioning yourself is hard because your ego wants to be right. It wants to protect the identity you've built. It resists being challenged. That's why most people surround themselves with confirmation. They seek comfort over truth. But the Stoic, He seeks clarity over ego. Because truth, even when it stings, is freedom. And without it, you're just arguing with reality. So here's the habit. When you feel certain, pause. When you're about to react, question it. Ask yourself, is this mine? Or did I absorb it from someone else? Is this fear pretending to be logic? What would this look like if I saw it from the outside? These questions don't weaken you. They protect you. They sharpen your sight. Because in the end, the mind you live in is the world you live in. And if you want a clearer world, start by cleaning your lens.
Number 5.
Don't rush to label things as good or bad. Life rarely announces its meaning in real time. A situation unfolds. Something unexpected happens. And instantly the mind jumps to label it. This is bad. Why this is unfair. This is a disaster. But the Stoics urged us to wait, to resist rushing into judgment, because what seems terrible today may, in time, reveal itself as necessary, even beneficial. And what seems like a gift now may prove to be a trap. Wisdom, they said, begins with withholding judgment. Epictetus warned against this mental reflex. Don't demand that things happen as you wish, he said, but wish that they happen as they do, and you will go on well. In other words, your peace doesn't come from what happens, but from how you frame it. And framing takes patience. It takes a moment of pause before the mind paints over everything with panic or excitement. And in that pause lies your freedom, not to control the event, but to shape how it lives inside you. This principle isn't just philosophical, it's intensely practical. Because your entire emotional life is shaped not by events, but by how you interpret them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it's endurable, endure it. If it's not, what are you waiting for? An end. He trained himself to view each moment not as good or bad, but as something to work with, as material for virtue, as fuel for character. In his writing, he often rephrased his challenge. Consider the story of Steve Jobs. In his early 30s, he was fired from Apple, the very company he co-founded. At the time, it seemed like a public failure, a humiliating end. But years later, Jobs reflected that it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Being removed from Apple gave him the freedom to explore, to create Pixar, to evolve. And when he eventually returned to Apple, he came back with a clearer vision and deeper wisdom. The worst thing had become the turning point, and that's the lesson. That's the hidden power in not labeling too soon. You give reality the space to reveal what it actually is, not just what your emotions say it is. Most people suffer twice, once from what happens and again from the meaning they attach to it. But the Stoic suffers less, not because life is easier, but because their mind doesn't amplify every difficulty into doom. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you create space between the feeling and the final judgment. You allow the possibility that what seems like an ending might be a beginning in disguise. You give yourself permission to say, I don't know yet. Let's see. That kind of patience, it changes your entire relationship to life. So here's the habit. When life throws something at you, pause. Don't call it a blessing or a curse. Call it what it is, an event. Then ask, how can I use this? Because if you're willing to see beyond the surface, everything, yes, everything, can shape you for the better. Number 6, always remember you will die, Memento Mori. It sounds harsh at first, almost morbid. But to the Stoics, the daily remembrance of death was not meant to depress you. It was meant to liberate you. Memento Mori, remember you will die, was not a cry of despair, but a call to awaken. It was a reminder that time is slipping away, and the only thing truly in your possession is this present moment. Not tomorrow, not next year, just now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. He wasn't being dramatic. He was being clear. Because nothing sharpens the mind like mortality. When you accept that you don't have forever, you stop wasting your energy on the trivial. You stop delaying the conversation you know you need to have. You stop pretending you have time to be someone you're not. You begin instead to live with urgency, with honesty, and with depth. Seneca, too, warned against wasting time as if it were infinite. It is not that we have a short time to live, he said, but that we waste a lot of it. And that truth stings because it's personal. Most people don't realize they're wasting time until it's too late. But the Stoic is different. He looks at the clock not with fear, but with focus. He asks, what matters most today? What will I regret not doing if tomorrow never comes? This mindset isn't about becoming obsessed with death. It's about becoming obsessed with life, with living fully, clearly, and deliberately. Consider Steve Jobs, who after being diagnosed with cancer, began every morning by looking in the mirror and asking, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do? He said that question changed how he approached every decision. It stripped away the illusion that he had time to waste. And in doing so, it brought his priorities into razor-sharp focus. But you don't need a diagnosis to think this way. The Stoics believed you should rehearse death, not to dwell on it, but to stop being controlled by it. Most people live in fear of the end, and so they avoid hard truths, delay bold moves, and numb themselves with distraction. But when you integrate mortality into your awareness, you become bolder, clearer, calmer. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I never try? Even the writer Oliver Sacks, when facing his own terminal illness, wrote in his final essays that knowing he was dying brought an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He no longer wasted a minute on trivial conflict or superficial ambitions. Everything unimportant faded. What remained was love, clarity, and peace. That is the gift of remembering death. It teaches you how to truly live. So here's the habit. Remind yourself every day you will not live forever. This moment will not come again. The conversation you're avoiding, the forgiveness you're withholding, the dream you're postponing, none of it is guaranteed another chance. Memento Mori means not waiting until death to start living. It means waking up now, because the truth is, death isn't the enemy of life. It's the reason life matters. And the more you remember that, the more alive you become. Number 7, admit when you're wrong and pivot fast. To the average person, being wrong feels like weakness. It threatens the ego, invites embarrassment, and disrupts the illusion of control. So instead of facing the truth, they double down. They defend a poor choice. They hold on to failing plans. They waste time protecting their pride. But the Stoic sees things differently. To them, admitting you're wrong isn't failure. It's freedom. It's a sign of strength, not surrender. Epictetus said, if someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. It is the truth I seek, and the truth never harmed anyone. Well, that's a radically different attitude from what we see today. We live in a culture obsessed with being right, where changing your mind is seen as weakness instead of wisdom. But the Stoic doesn't cling to being right. They cling to being real. They understand that clarity only comes when you let go of the need to look perfect. Even Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire, humbled himself constantly in his journal. In Meditations, you don't find a man trying to project superiority. You find a man obsessed with self-examination. He wrote as if he were a student of his own mistakes. He asked himself, where have I been dishonest? Where have I ignored wiser voices? Where have I let pride cloud my perception? He didn't see correction as shameful. He saw it as necessary for growth. Now consider Ray Dalio, billionaire investor and founder of Bridgewater Associates. Early in his career, Dalio made a bold market prediction that turned out to be disastrously wrong. It cost him almost everything. But instead of hiding from it, he leaned in. He analyzed where he failed. He built a culture based on radical truth, where mistakes were surfaced, not buried. He said that failure was the most valuable experience of his life, not because it felt good, but because it forced transformation. And that's the essence of this habit. The mistake isn't what ruins you. It's your resistance to pivot. It's your unwillingness to let go. When you cling to being right, you lose access to new paths, better outcomes, clearer thinking. But when you can say, I was wrong, you clear the clutter. You become faster, lighter, wiser. You stop bleeding energy into defending the indefensible. Still, let's be honest, this is not easy. Your ego will resist. It will whisper, you'll look weak. They'll think less of you. Sermony rain. But here's the paradox. The more quickly you admit your flaws, the more powerful your presence becomes. Because authenticity builds respect, it sharpens judgment, and it tells the world you are ruled by truth, not fear. So here's the Stoic habit. When you feel yourself holding a position tightly, pause. Ask, is this true or just familiar? Ask, am I protecting truth or just my pride? Then pivot, not slowly, not with drama, but cleanly, decisively. Because the Stoic doesn't serve their ego. They serve reality. And reality, once you stop fighting it, always becomes your greatest teacher. Number 8, don't let the crowd think for you. The loudest voices are rarely the wisest. And yet most people surrender their judgment to the crowd without realizing it. They conform to trends. They echo opinions. They chase goals that don't belong to them. Slowly, they lose their inner voice. Not because it disappeared, but because they stopped listening to it. The Stoics warned against this centuries ago. They knew that following the crowd too closely leads you away from yourself. Epictetus once said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's the price of independence. Because when you think for yourself, you will stand out. You will be misunderstood. You might even be mocked. But the alternative is far worse. To live your life on autopilot, driven not by your own reason, but by the emotional current of the masses. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about the importance of self-direction. In Meditations, he reminded himself, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. He wasn't interested in popularity. He was interested in truth. And truth often lives in quiet places, not on the surface of public noise. He frequently warned himself not to be turned into a Caesar, not to let power or the applause of others corrupt his clarity. And this principle is even more urgent today. We live in an age of constant broadcast. Social media has turned the crowd into a 24/7 megaphone. Every thought is met with judgment. Every decision is exposed to scrutiny. In this environment, it's easy to lose yourself. You start to filter your actions through public opinion rather than personal wisdom. But the Stoic resists that pull. They don't reject society, but they refuse to let it override their reason. Consider the story of Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, one thing is clear. He doesn't outsource his thinking. From electric cars to space travel to brain-computer interfaces, Musk has repeatedly challenged conventional wisdom. At times, he's been laughed at, even ridiculed. But he doesn't let ridicule derail his reasoning. He follows what he believes to be true, not what others want him to believe. And that's a Stoic principle in action. The courage to think independently, even when it's uncomfortable. And we can go deeper. Think of Socrates, the philosophical ancestor of the Stoics. He was put on trial for corrupting the youth, for challenging popular opinion, for thinking too freely. But Socrates didn't recant. He stood by his reason, even when it cost him his life. The Stoics admired him deeply, because to them, dying with clarity was better than living with compromise. So here's the habit. When everyone is shouting, pause. When everyone agrees, inspect it. Ask yourself, is this true or just familiar? Do I believe this because I've thought it through, or because it's convenient? The goal isn't to rebel for attention. It's to remain awake. Because once you lose your inner compass, even success will feel hollow. And if you want peace, not just applause, you must let your mind be your own. Number 9, redefine suffering on your own terms. Pain is inevitable, but suffering, that's often a matter of interpretation. What breaks one person strengthens another. Not because the pain was different, but because the meaning was. This is where Stoic wisdom shines brightest. The Stoics didn't seek comfort. They didn't run from discomfort. Instead, they turned every hardship into a lesson, every obstacle into a forge. To them, suffering wasn't something to avoid. It was something to repurpose. Epictetus understood this intimately. Born a slave, physically disabled, and subjected to years of hardship, he never saw himself as a victim. He taught that we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. Now, in other words, pain is real, but whether it ruins you or refines you is a choice. And that choice begins when you decide to name your suffering on your own terms, not through pity, but through purpose. Marcus Aurelius echoed this in Meditations. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. To most, that sounds paradoxical, but to the Stoic, it's a powerful shift in mindset. If something painful is in front of you, it's not just a wall, it's raw material. You don't endure it passively. You shape yourself through it. You say, "This is mine now. What can I build from it?" Consider the story of Oprah Winfrey. She endured poverty, abuse, rejection, all before the age of 20. But instead of letting her pain define her, she redefined the pain. She used it as insight, as motivation, as fuel. She once said, "Turn your wounds into wisdom." A thought that is Stoic thinking in modern form. It's not about being unaffected, it's about being forged. Still, let's not romanticize pain. It hurts. It disrupts your was. It changes things. But that's precisely why it can shape you, if you let it. Most people resist suffering by running from it, denying it, numbing it. But the Stoic does something different. They face it. They ask, why is this here? What is it revealing about me? What part of me is still soft, still reactive, still unexamined? They use the pain as a mirror, not a prison. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." He didn't mean you should seek suffering just to prove something. He meant that when suffering comes, and it will, you should meet it with discipline, not despair. Because it's in those moments when things feel hardest that your character is being formed in silence. Moreover, the Stoics believed that you could become anti-fragile, not just surviving hardship, but thriving through it. They saw adversity as life's greatest teacher, not because it's pleasant, but because it's honest. Pain strips away illusion. It shows you who you really are, and it gives you the rare opportunity to rebuild that self, deliberately, consciously, from the ground up. So here's the habit. When suffering visits, don't ask why me, ask what now. Don't let pain name you. Name it. Define how it will shape you. Decide what part of you it's going to strengthen. Because if you let the world decide what your pain means, it will always turn you into a victim. But if you decide, consciously, clearly, that even suffering must serve your growth, then nothing can stop you. Not even the pain itself. No one becomes wiser by accident. You grow by practicing these habits, one deliberate moment at a time. In a world that rewards noise, you chose clarity. In a culture obsessed with speed, you chose depth. And that choice makes you stronger than most. If this message spoke to something in you, don't just scroll away. Reflect in. Every watch, series. Apply. And if you want more Stoic tools to sharpen your mind and strengthen your soul, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Your path to inner mastery doesn't end here. It's only just begun. Stay grounded, Mar. Stay clear. Stay powerful.